I'll go to a shorter question, maybe. Hopefully, if you can answer. Can you speak about the controls in place to ensure there's no political interference in the selection of companies that are bidding for contracts?
Well, this is so good, so important, and so good to point to. Now, there shouldn't be, and we don't want it to be the case, that there is political interference in the choice of which company will be awarded a contract. And that's why accountability requires ministers and their officers to detach themselves from political interference in the contractual arrangements, including the choice of the contractors at the federal government's level. We expect that to be the case, and that's what is also the case at PSPC and elsewhere in the federal government.
Thank you.
Great. Colleagues, we've got about 3 minutes left, so I will suspend. We will be back right after the vote. Customary, it's 5 minutes when the vote is announced, so we will be starting right on that. Minister, are you staying in the room voting virtually? Sir?
Chair, can we ask for UC to vote from here, and then once everybody has voted, continue the questioning?
If that works. Oh, I can't for Larry.
My app's not working.
Sorry.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, sorry, one of the apps not working, so we will suspend. Okay. Well, no, 3 minutes and it starts, and it's 10 minutes. Okay, if that's fine with everyone, we will, once everyone has voted, we will start up again because we only have the minister to 5:30, if that works for everyone. Perfect. We'll do so. Now with Mrs. Vignola, please, for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I welcome Minister Duclos and your officials. Thank you for coming today. Mr. Duclos, the Department of Public Services and Procurement is asking for $800 million for cybersecurity for defense contractors, and this is a horizontal item in the 2023 budget. So it made me wonder, don't we already have cybersecurity? Why wasn't that planned earlier? Does it need to be improved? Is there any kind of threat or danger? Why is it that all of a sudden we need more for this, and specifically in the area of defense? Well, thank you very much, and that's a very good question. It's not all of a sudden that we need that amount. It's an additional amount. Now, obviously, there are already significant investments in cybersecurity and significant measures, including at national defense. But given what's happening around the globe, and given the kind of information that's out there and the threats that exist in several countries, I don't think I need to go into any detail. Everyone knows what I'm referring to, but we need to invest more in cybersecurity and national defense. So these are additional investments. So if it's for operations, is that to include human resources? Well, I don't know by heart what the breakdown is, but perhaps someone can expand on what 1C represents. This is mainly for human resources, yes. I also see for shared services that there will be a transfer of operational expenditures of $810 million for payments and revenue. And I also see there will be a capital transfer for $689,000. Now, when we're talking about payments and revenue, well, it has made the headlines occasionally because there was a situation where there were very few tests being done and there was a very long trial, rather a very short trial period. Can you please assure me that for this project, for the revenue and payments project, that we won't end up with another Phoenix problem where there wasn't a long enough trial, and despite that, it was implemented? So can you please assure me that this application will not harm trade in general and will not harm in tax collections at our borders. Well, that is the goal. We want to do better in a context of the automation of, or rather, payments becoming automatic. We need to make sure that there's rigorous oversight of transfers and payments. And if you would like, we can explain to you exactly how that will take place. But what we want to do is maintain the way that we are working, however, when there are small margins and when we have to make adjustments. Perhaps someone could expand on this. I believe this is for shared services. I'm sorry, I only have 30 seconds left, so I just want to make sure, because you see, this is going to be deployed, this project is going to be deployed in May, and what we're hearing is that despite the amounts that have been put there, and despite this very short trial period and rather inconclusive testing, that this will still be deployed regardless, and I don't want us to end up with a Phoenix 2.0. So can you please assure us that this won't just open up fraud at the borders? Well, it's very important to be able to answer, because in terms of the transfers and readjustments, Mr. Jones would be able to answer you. Well, it's very important to note that the role of Shared Services Canada is to provide network services and connections to the cloud for the Border Services Agency. However, it's not our responsibility to create the application. We've already put into place all the services that are required.
Some response in writing to the committee. Mr. Bachrach, please go ahead for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, Canadians have been rightly shocked and horrified as the details of the botched ArriveCan procurement have been made public. And one aspect that I think seems particularly egregious to people is the charging of commissions by contractors that do very little, if any, work. And I thought this was illustrated best by some communication that came out through the investigation by Bottler, IT company from Montreal. And they describe a phone call with the principal of GC Strategies where he talks about CBSA essentially rolling out this particular IT product to the rest of the government's departments, and that a 15% commission would be charged by his company, something that he laughed at and said the higher pricing would, quote, suck for Canada. Do you agree that charging those kinds of commissions sucks for Canada?
So let me answer that great question in 3 different ways. The first piece,
because I have 5 minutes, so really tight.
the first piece is that in normal circumstances, you would want those services to be provided by the public service. There are hundreds of thousands of public servants who work very hard and invest their talents and their energy every day to make a difference for Canada, and you would want that expertise and those efforts of the public service to be used. The second thing is that if that's not the case, it either is because there is no ability to do that, and in a complex world, which is becoming complex every day, there are instances in which it's not possible for the public service to answer all of those needs, or it might be that it's too urgent to do so. It would take too little time to do that, as was the case in COVID-19. Now, the third piece, I would say, is that when that is needed, when staff augmentation or contracting is needed for Canadian safety and health to be protected, as was the case in COVID-19, that has to be done following rules. These rules were very clear during COVID-19. Unfortunately, they were not followed by all public servants.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Minister, but there's no rule against charging a commission and doing absolutely no work for that commission. If you're gonna get a government contract, you're a company, you get a government contract, you subcontract that work to someone else and charge 15%. The Canadian public gets very little value for that 15%. Tell me if there's a rule in the government of Canada that prevents that from happening.
Two important points that you mentioned. First, the process. Second, the value. The process has to be open, fair, and transparent, and that's part of this team's job to make sure that this is the case in all contracts, including in emergency contracts, as was the case during COVID-19. The second piece is value for money. Now, value for money is to be assessed by what we call client departments. As in this case, it was CBSA. CBSA had to decide whether it thought it was value for money to invest in that particular contract in the context of the COVID-19 emergency. They thought that the emergency, the speed, the complexity of the work that they faced deserved a contract of that sort. Now, there were rules that had to be followed. They knew these rules. The rules were clearly stated. Unfortunately, some of them, yes, a small number of them, but some of them didn't follow those rules, and you know the outcomes.
I didn't hear an answer to the question.
I
The question was very simple. Is there a rule? Does the Government of Canada have a rule against charging commissions and not doing any work for the commissions? Like, we're talking about the evidence before the committees of Parliament has shown that it can be 15, 30%, and there can be several layers. So you can get to a point where the Government of Canada is contracting something out and only half of the actual monetary value is going towards doing actual work. The Canadian public should be horrified that this is happening. The Governor, or the Auditor General rather, very clearly in her report said that your government overpaid for the ArriveCan app. I'm not sensing any sort of like contrition or embarrassment or sense that this is wrong. I asked you if you agreed that it sucks for Canada, and you didn't answer. Does it suck for Canada that we're wasting money on these apps and contracts for companies that do little or no work? I think it does.
Well, the best answer comes indeed from the Auditor General, who said very clearly that there wasn't enough value for money in the work that was done by GC Strategy. She said that many weeks ago, and she's correct. She pointed to the fact that had that job been done within the federal public service, it would have cost about 50% less. Now, whether that would have been possible is something different,
that is
but she did indeed point to a lack of value for money.
So I have to cut you off. We're going to go to the next round. We're doing 4 minutes, 2, and then 4 minutes in order to get the minister out by 5:30. Go ahead, Mrs. Block.
Thank you. And just a heads up, Chair, I'm going to take the first couple of minutes and then pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Jennis. Bill Curry reported that officials said the 3 subcontractors are not connected to the ArriveCan app for international travelers, that these are different than GC Strategies. Can you please confirm that for me?
Can you please expand on what you would like me to answer on?
Can you confirm that the 3 subcontractors are not connected to the ArriveCan application?
Oh, you mean the 3 subcontractors of which we spoke earlier, so
Yes.
the case of this morning? Yes, the information that we have, and again, it's information that is not complete because no one would like to know in this room that the minister is meddling with RCMP investigation. The information that we have is that this is the case.
Thank you. So we've also learned from Bill Curry and yourself that there are even more cases being looked into. Under your government, $21 billion has been paid to external consultants. How many of them are fraudsters, and how much money have they been paid?
Well, the good news is that you're asking this question today. We had a press conference just a moment ago where we did point to the fact that e-procurement, electronic procurement activities over the last few years have been accelerated. And the good outcome of that is that we're now able to find out about those fraudulent activities, which probably have been going on for decades, but for which we couldn't do anything because there wasn't an ability to collect, gather, and analyze data. The good news, we have data analytics in 2024. We have the ability to share electronic data, and we're able to do a lot
And
better.
Minister, the good news is that it was Conservatives that introduced a motion here in this committee and in the House to have this investigated, and your caucus voted against it. Thanks.
Obviously, we're all very pleased that all MPs contribute to the work of this committee. This, however, comes from a 2018 budget investment.
Minister, thanks. It's my time now. I'd like to ask you a very specific question. When were you first briefed on the issues and challenges with ArriveCan?
I was briefed on, obviously I was aware of that for a number of years. That's the first thing. The second thing is I was briefed very quickly after my coming into office.
Do you have a date for us?